Whenever you're ready.
As you know, I'm Kristina. My topic is on genetically modified crops. The creation of genetically modified crops has been a controversial topic for many years because it's been deemed unnatural and unsafe. However, I am about to tell you a story where this isn't the case. Dennis Gonzalez is a native-born Hawaiian and a proud creator of the rainbow papaya. The papaya is a staple crop in many parts of Hawaii and is known to help many farmers. But in past years, the ring spot virus has affected the growth of the papaya. However, with the creation of the rainbow papaya, farmers are able to grow their crop properly. But how is this possible? It so happens that the rainbow papaya is a result of genetic modification, and it has the ability to resist viruses. Dennis Gonzalez and the rainbow papaya is just one example of how genetic modification has benefited society. This brings me to my major claim that genetically modified crops are beneficial to human beings. I will now state my supporting claims, which is first, that genetically modified foods will help feed the world's growing population. Second, genetically modified crops will benefit the economy. And thirdly, genetically modified crops are beneficial to human health. Now going back to my first supporting claim, that genetically modified foods will help feed the world's growing population, is that genetically modified foods or crops can withstand certain weather and climate conditions. Monsanto, a leading agricultural company, is working to create a genetically modified corn that can better obtain water. This was created due to the drought that we all know about. This then brings me to the issue that genetically modified crops can also survive viruses, strong herbicides, and threats from insects. The rainbow papaya is just one example of how genetically modified crops have resisted viruses. The National Agricultural Statistics Service has also gathered data that 94% of soybean plants in the U.S. are herbicide tolerant and genetically engineered. It is also known that insect resistance is a second common trait found in genetically modified crops. Genetically modified crops can also be mass-produced. Environmental writer Mark Linus stated that genetically modified crops were used in Missouri to feed 300 million sub-Saharan Africans whose own cassavas are threatened by viruses. This now leads me to my second supporting claim. Genetically modified crops can benefit the economy. Genetically modified crops allow farmers to make more money. In a recent study, it was estimated that 49% of farm income gain is due to genetic engineering of crops. Consumers can also buy cheaper foods when it comes to genetically modified crops. In an article by Craig Gunderson, it states that genetically modified foods have helped low-income citizens purchase food at a low cost. And now it leads me to my third supporting claim that genetically modified crops are beneficial to human health. It has been known that it has been assumed that genetically modified crops are not beneficial to human health and are unsafe. But there has been studies and cases where genetically modified foods have equivalent or even better nutritional value to non-modified foods. For one, the creation of the golden rice contains high quantities of vitamin A. Vitamin A helps with blindness, and it can also help with malnutrition as well as other things. Another way that genetically modified crops are beneficial to human health is that genetic engineering can be used to demolish harmful aspects found in certain crops. The Department of Agriculture announced the creation of a genetically modified potato that contains less of acrylamide, which is said to cause cancer when it was fried. So the creation of the genetically modified potato, acrylamide is not as present as it is in non-modified potatoes. So cancer is less of a problem. This then brings me to my conclusion that genetically modified foods will help feed the world's growing population, will benefit the economy and is beneficial to human health, and shows that genetically modified crops are beneficial to human beings. Thank you.
All right, Kristina, let me start with something that is it's a little contradictory. You're doing a good job keeping it organized, but in delivering that organization, it's a little bit awkward. You need to work on making smoother transitions and moving between the points, because it's very mechanical. It's there's a level of skillfulness that you go through when you're developing things, and I'm sure everybody. Do you guys remember learning to drive?
Yeah.
You know, when you first get behind the wheel, everything, you're so very deliberate about doing things. You turn on the car, look over my shoulder, you know, go back here, take my foot off the brake, and I can see that you're doing all the right things. It's like that. I can tell that you've got the sequencing and the other thing, but it just hasn't become skillful and natural yet. So it's just a little bit awkward. And I think that hurts a little bit, even though I think that you've got a pretty clearly structured speech and you set it up well. So like I said, I think that's a little contradictory. So it's well organized, but mechanically as it's presented, it feels a little bit awkward. I think you could do a little bit more to demonstrate the controversy at the beginning of the speech. There, you know, maybe mention some of the anti-GMO groups, some of the criticisms that have been made in other parts of the world about genetically modified foods, you know, movements that exist to restrict access to it or ban them outright or something like that, so that we know why this is a big deal. I do think that the supporting points you picked out seem to be working pretty well. The stuff on the first point, you've got drought-resistant stuff, herbicide-resistant stuff, insect-resistant stuff, and it increases mass production. I do think we could use a few more numbers on those things. I know what they're supposed to do. The only one that we got any data on that was, you know, kind of hard on that was the soybean crop that's 94% herbicide resistant. I don't know how important that is to the soybean crop, but apparently it matters. That's the one thing that's quantifiable on that. The economic benefits, I think you rushed through a little bit. It did seem like there would be some pretty important points on that. I like the example that you start off with at the beginning of the speech to show how there really is a benefit with the rainbow papaya. I thought that was a good illustration of the point, so that works pretty well for you. I think that, I mean, you've got a claim in there that says that 300 million Africans are basically substantially supported by genetically modified foods, and I'm going, that's an impressive piece of information. That's something that needs to be highlighted a little bit more and feels a little bit buried in your argument, and so I'm not exactly sure why it didn't come across quite as forcefully as it could have. I think that that would be a point to emphasize a little bit more. All right, thank you. Okay.